At exactly 2:34 a.m. on December 3, 2018, Marcus Thompson stood inside ATM hash 4,471 holding $3.2 million in cartel drug money. He'd come to fix a jam, but discovered the Sinaloa cartel was using his machines as personal safes. With Russian mob threatening to kill his kids over gambling debts, Marcus made a choice that would start the most twisted heist war in Chicago history. But this story didn't begin with a desperate technician robbing two criminal organizations. It started 6 months earlier when Marcus's addiction destroyed everything he loved and created a debt that only blood money could pay. Marcus Thompson, 34, had been servicing ATMs for Cash Flow Systems, Inc. for 7 years. He maintained over 150 machines across the Chicago metropolitan area, working alone with complete autonomy. He set his own schedule, drove a company van, and possessed master access codes to every ATM in his territory, from downtown loop locations handling millions daily to suburban strip mall machines processing thousands. The job paid $54,000 annually, enough for a modest lifestyle. Marcus lived in a small studio apartment on the north side, drove his company van everywhere, and had built a reputation as the most reliable technician in the company. Managers trusted him completely. He'd never been questioned about his work, never had a complaint filed, never aroused suspicion from anyone. His personal life was another story. Marcus was divorced from Linda, his wife of 8 years, after his gambling addiction destroyed their marriage and consumed their $180,000 in life savings. The divorce was brutal. Linda got custody of their 2 children, 8-year-old Emma and 6-year-old Jake, while Marcus was ordered to pay $2,800 monthly in child support despite his modest salary. The gambling had started innocently enough: weekend poker games with friends, occasional trips to riverboat casinos, small sports bets during football season. But Marcus had an addictive personality that turned recreational gambling into a destructive obsession. He progressed from $20 poker hands to $500 blackjack bets to $2,000 sports wagers he couldn't afford. By the time Linda filed for divorce, Marcus had emptied their joint savings account, maxed out 4 credit cards, borrowed against his 401k, and taken a second mortgage on their house. The financial devastation was complete. They lost the house, cars, and everything they built together over 8 years of marriage. "You chose gambling over your family," Linda had said during their final argument. "You're addicted to losing money, and now you've lost everything that mattered." The divorce decree was devastating. Marcus kept his job and his debt, while Linda got the kids and moved to Milwaukee with her sister. Marcus was allowed supervised visits every other weekend, but only if his child support payments were current. Miss a payment, lose visitation rights. $2,800 monthly on a $54,000 salary left Marcus with roughly $1,200 after taxes and support payments. His studio apartment cost $900, leaving $300 for food, utilities, gas, and survival. It was barely enough to exist, let alone pay down the massive debt he'd accumulated, but the gambling addiction hadn't died with his marriage. If anything, the depression and isolation made it worse. Marcus found himself betting money he didn't have on games he didn't understand, chasing losses with bigger bets, falling deeper into a hole that seemed impossible to climb out of. That's when Viktor Kozlov found him. Viktor Kozlov ran the most sophisticated loan sharking operation in Chicago. Unlike street-level loan sharks who relied on physical intimidation, Viktor operated like a legitimate business, complete with offices, contracts, and professional collection procedures. His clients were desperate people with good jobs who needed money fast and couldn't qualify for traditional loans. Marcus had found Viktor through a poker buddy who'd used his services to cover divorce attorney fees. "Viktor's expensive but reliable," the friend explained. 20% monthly interest, but he gives you time to pay and doesn't break legs unless you really screw him over. 20% monthly sounded manageable to Marcus's addiction-clouded judgment. He needed $50,000 to catch up on child support and cover gambling debts to other creditors. He figured he could pay it back within 6 months if he got lucky at the tables. Viktor's office was in a downtown high-rise, complete with a reception area, professional staff, and contracts printed on expensive letterhead. Viktor himself was a well-dressed man in his 50s who spoke English with only a slight accent. He looked more like a banker than a mobster. "Mr. Thompson," Viktor had said during their first meeting, I understand you need capital to resolve some financial difficulties. I can provide $50,000 today with very simple terms. 20% monthly interest, minimum payments of $10,000 per month, full balance due within 12 months. The math was insane. $50,000 would become $170,000 over 12 months. But Marcus was desperate. He signed the contract without reading the fine print, took the money, and immediately lost $30,000 of it in a single weekend at a riverboat casino. The remaining $20,000 disappeared over the following month on sports bets and poker games. Marcus told himself he was just having bad luck, that his winning streak was coming, that he'd pay Victor back with interest once he hit the big score. Instead, he fell further behind every month. After 6 months, Marcus owed Victor $85,000 and could barely make the minimum $10,000 monthly payments on his $3,400 take-home salary. He was surviving on credit cards, borrowing from one source to pay another, spiraling toward financial collapse. That's when Victor's true nature emerged. "Mr. Thompson," Victor said during a meeting in November 2017, "you're 3 months behind on payments. Our contract specifies certain remedies for default." Victor's 2 associates, Dmitry and Alexei, stepped forward. They looked exactly like what they were, professional enforcers who hurt people for money. "We have a very simple collection policy," Victor continued. "First missed payment gets you a conversation. Second missed payment gets you a reminder. Third missed payment gets you a lesson you won't forget." Dmitry and Alexei spent the next 10 minutes breaking 3 of Marcus's ribs and explaining how much worse things could get. Marcus lay on the floor of Victor's office, gasping in pain, while Victor calmly discussed the consequences of continued non-payment. "You currently owe $127,000, including penalties and interest," Victor explained. "Monthly payments are now $18,000 to cover current charges and reduce principal. Miss another payment, and we visit your ex-wife in Milwaukee. Miss 2 payments, and we visit your children at school." Victor showed Marcus photographs of Emma and Jake walking to school, playing in their aunt's backyard, sitting in classrooms at Lincoln Elementary. The message was unmistakable. Victor's people could reach Marcus's children anytime they wanted. "You have a very simple choice, Mr. Thompson. Find a way to pay $18,000 every month, or watch your family disappear one piece at a time. We start with fingers, move to eyes, and finish with graves." Marcus limped home with broken ribs and the horrifying realization that he'd gambled away not just his own life, but his children's safety. Victor wasn't bluffing. Russian organized crime had a reputation for following through on threats involving family members. $18,000 monthly on his salary was mathematically impossible. Marcus brought home $3,400 after taxes and child support. Even if he stopped eating and lived in his van, he couldn't generate $18,000 monthly through legitimate means. That's when Marcus began studying the ATM network he serviced with new eyes, not as a technician maintaining machines, but as a desperate man looking for opportunities to steal enough money to keep his children alive. The revelation came during a routine emergency call on July 12, 2018. Marcus's dispatcher radioed him at 3:47 a.m. with an urgent job. "ATM hash 4471 downtown is completely jammed. Armored car crew says they lost $50K inside the machine during their routine fill. Bank opens in 4 hours. Get there now and fix whatever's wrong." Marcus knew ATM hash 4471 well. It was a First National Bank machine located in the financial district, one of the busiest in his territory. The machine typically processed over $200,000 daily in transactions and required weekly cash refills. A jam serious enough to trap $50,000 was unusual, but not unprecedented. He arrived to find a disturbing scene. The ATM had been partially destroyed. Someone had attempted to crowbar open the front panel, leaving deep gouges in the steel housing. The cash dispensing slot was jammed with what looked like torn bills. The screen displayed a critical error message he'd never seen before. More concerning was the armored car crew waiting beside the machine. Marcus had worked with dozens of armored car teams over 7 years, and these men didn't look right. They were too nervous, too well-armed, and driving an unmarked van instead of a proper armored vehicle. "About time you got here," one of them said in accented English. "Machine grabbed our money and won't give it back. Fix it fast." Marcus began his standard diagnostic procedure. opening the ATM service panels to access the internal mechanisms. The jam appeared to be in the cash dispensing module, where bills had become tangled in the counting mechanism. But as he worked to clear the obstruction, his screwdriver slipped and punctured what he'd assumed was the back panel of the cash storage area. Instead of hitting solid steel, the screwdriver broke through what turned out to be a false panel concealing a hidden compartment. Behind the fake back wall, Marcus discovered vacuum-sealed packages of cash marked with symbols he didn't recognize. His heart stopped as he realized what he was looking at. The packages were professional money storage, the kind used by drug traffickers to transport and hide large amounts of cash. Each package contained approximately $100,000 in mixed bills, and he could see at least 30 packages in the hidden compartment. $3 million, hidden inside an ATM he serviced regularly. Marcus glanced at the armored car crew, who were watching him intently while trying to appear casual. Everything suddenly made sense. These weren't legitimate armored car employees. They were criminals using his ATMs as secure storage for drug money. The jam had been caused by someone attempting to access their hidden compartment, probably interrupted by police or security. "How's it looking?" one of the fake armored car employees asked. "Complex internal damage," Marcus replied, fighting to keep his voice steady. "Need a few more hours to assess the full extent of the problem." The men exchanged glances. "Machine handles special business for special clients," their leader said carefully. "Hope you understand the importance of discretion in situations like this." "I fix machines, not ask questions," Marcus replied, using a tone he hoped conveyed professional indifference rather than the terror he actually felt. The men nodded approvingly and retreated to their van to wait. Marcus continued working on the legitimate jam, while his mind raced through the implications of his discovery. He was looking at more money than he'd see in 20 lifetimes of ATM repair, hidden by criminals who would kill him without hesitation if they suspected he knew about it. But he was also looking at the solution to his Russian mob problem. $3 million would pay off Victor with enough left over to disappear somewhere safe. The question was whether he could steal it without getting killed by either the cartel or Victor's people. As Marcus worked, more pieces of the puzzle fell into place. Over the past year, he'd noticed unusual patterns with certain ATMs in his territory. Machines that required more frequent service calls, unusual error messages that disappeared when he arrived, cash counts that never quite matched transaction logs. He'd attributed these anomalies to normal equipment issues, but now he realized he'd been maintaining a sophisticated money laundering operation without knowing it. Drug cartels had modified his ATMs to serve as mobile banks, storing millions of dollars in hidden compartments while maintaining the appearance of normal banking operations. Marcus finished clearing the legitimate jam and restored the ATM to normal operation, carefully avoiding any disturbance to the hidden compartment. The fake armored car crew tested the machine, confirmed it was working properly, and departed without acknowledging the hidden money. As soon as they left, Marcus began a comprehensive analysis of his entire ATM network using his service database. What he discovered was staggering. At least 12 machines in his territory showed the suspicious patterns he'd just learned to recognize. If each one contained even half as much money as ATM hash 4471, he was looking at a criminal network storing over $20 million across Chicago. Marcus had accidentally discovered the biggest opportunity of his life. The question was whether he was desperate enough to risk everything by stealing from drug cartels to pay off the Russian mob. The answer came 3 days later, when Victor's men visited him at another ATM repair job. Victor's enforcers, Dmitry and Alexei, appeared beside Marcus's van as he finished a routine maintenance call on July 15th. Their timing wasn't coincidental. They'd been tracking his movements, probably for weeks. "Marcus, my friend," Dmitry said with mock friendliness, "Victor sent us to remind you about tomorrow's payment. $18,000 due by close of business." "I'm working on it," Marcus replied, trying to sound more confident than he felt. "Working on it how?" Alexei asked. "You make $3,400 per month after taxes and child support. Even if you stop eating and sleeping, the math doesn't work." They were right, of course. Marcus had run the numbers hundreds of times looking for a solution that didn't exist. His legitimate income couldn't possibly generate the money Victor demanded. "Maybe you need additional motivation," Dmitri suggested, pulling out his phone to show Marcus recent photographs of Emma and Jake playing at their Milwaukee school. Beautiful children. Be a shame if something happened to them because their father couldn't manage his financial obligations. The threat was clear and credible. Victor's organization had successfully intimidated dozens of debtors by threatening family members. They would absolutely follow through if Marcus couldn't pay. That night, Marcus made his decision. He returned to ATM hash 4471 at 2 a.m. when the financial district was completely deserted. Using his master access codes, he opened the machine and carefully dismantled the false panel concealing the cartel's money. His hands shook as he removed 5 vacuum-sealed packages, $500,000 in untraceable cash. He replaced the stolen packages with newspaper bundles cut to the same size, hoping to delay discovery long enough to cover his tracks. Marcus also modified the ATM's internal software to hide the theft. He altered transaction logs, adjusted cash count records, and programmed the machine to report normal balances for the next 72 hours. By the time the cartel discovered the missing money, the digital trail would be impossible to follow. The next evening, Marcus walked into Victor's office carrying a briefcase containing $50,000 in cash. "Here's this month's payment, plus an extra $32,000 to show good faith," Marcus announced, placing the money on Victor's desk. Victor examined the bills carefully, checking for counterfeits or tracking devices. "Very impressive, Mr. Thompson. May I ask how you suddenly acquired this additional income?" "I've been working overtime and picked up some freelance computer consulting," Marcus lied smoothly. "Turns out my technical skills are more valuable than I realized." Victor nodded approvingly. "Excellent. Continue this level of payment, and we'll have you debt-free within 8 months instead of 24. Marcus left Victor's office feeling simultaneously relieved and terrified. He'd successfully stolen from drug cartel without immediate detection, but he'd also crossed a line that made him a target for multiple criminal organizations. Over the next week, Marcus monitored ATM hash 4471 obsessively through his service database. The machine continued operating normally, processing transactions and reporting standard cash levels. His software modifications were working perfectly, but on July 23rd, his worst fears were realized. The cartel discovered the theft. Marcus was conducting routine maintenance on ATM hash 2847 when his radio crackled with an emergency dispatch. "All units be advised of suspicious activity at ATM hash 4471. Possible theft or vandalism. Respond immediately for assessment." Marcus's blood turned to ice. The cartel had found his newspaper bundles. He drove to ATM hash 4471 to find 3 unmarked vehicles surrounding the machine. Men in expensive suits were examining the ATM, while others checked nearby security cameras and interviewed potential witnesses. Eduardo Santos, whom Marcus now recognized as the cartel's local operations manager, approached his van as he parked. "Mr. Thompson," Santos said with dangerous calm, "we have a problem with this machine. Someone has been inside the secure areas." "What kind of problem?" Marcus asked, fighting to keep his voice steady. "The kind that costs us significant money and makes us very interested in finding the responsible party." Santos led Marcus to the opened ATM, where he could see his newspaper bundles had been discovered and removed. The hidden compartment was completely exposed, leaving no doubt that someone had found and stolen the cartel's money. "This machine handles special deposits for special clients," Santos explained. "Someone with technical knowledge and access codes stole approximately $500,000 in merchandise. We need to know who has that level of access." Marcus realized he was walking into an interrogation that could end with his death. But he also recognized an opportunity to deflect suspicion while gathering intelligence about the cartel's security procedures. "I can pull maintenance logs for the past month," Marcus offered. "See who's accessed this machine and when." "Do that," Santos ordered. Marcus connected his diagnostic laptop to the ATM and called up the maintenance records, which he'd carefully modified to hide his own unauthorized access. According to the logs, only 3 people had serviced the machine in the past month: Marcus himself for routine maintenance, another cash flow systems technician named Rodriguez for a cash loading error, and an unnamed third party who'd accessed the machine at 3:17 a.m. on July 13th without proper authorization codes. This is interesting, Marcus said, pointing to the unauthorized access. Someone bypassed our security protocols early Saturday morning. Professional job. They knew exactly how to avoid triggering standard alarms. Santos studied the log entries with growing anger. Can you identify this person? Not from these records, Marcus replied. But I can set up enhanced monitoring to catch them if they try again. Do it, Santos said. And if you discover who's stealing from us, there's a $25,000 reward for information leading to their recovery. Marcus nodded professionally, while internally marveling at the cartel's inability to imagine that the technician helping with their investigation was actually the thief they were hunting. Over the following weeks, Marcus used his access to monitor the cartel's security improvements. They installed additional cameras, changed access codes, and increased the frequency of their cash counting procedures. But they still trusted Marcus completely, viewing him as a neutral service provider rather than a potential threat. The enhanced security made future thefts more challenging but not impossible. Marcus began planning his next target, ATM hash 2847, which his reconnaissance had identified as another major storage location for cartel money. But Victor's monthly payment was approaching, and Marcus needed $18,000 by August 15th. One way or another, he had to steal enough money to keep his children safe. Marcus spent 2 weeks studying ATM hash 2847's operational patterns before executing his next theft. Located at Commerce Bank, the machine served as a storage point for the cartel's weekly cash collections from their drug sales across the South Side. Every Tuesday night, Santos's crew would arrive with duffel bags full of money, supposedly conducting maintenance on the machine while actually loading cash into the hidden compartments Marcus had learned to identify. By Wednesday morning, the machine typically contained between $800,000 and $1.2 million in cartel money. Marcus's plan was audacious. He would create a legitimate technical crisis during the cartel's loading operation, forcing them to request emergency assistance while he was in perfect position to steal from them. On Tuesday, August 21st, Marcus monitored the cartel's radio frequencies using equipment he'd purchased with his stolen money. At 11:47 p.m., he heard Santos's crew reporting their arrival at ATM hash 2847 for routine maintenance. From his van parked 3 blocks away, Marcus used his laptop to remotely access the ATM's internal systems. He triggered a cascade of error messages that would make the machine appear to malfunction catastrophically while the cartel was loading money. The machine's display began flashing critical warnings: internal fault detected, cash transport error, system lockdown initiated. The cash loading mechanism jammed, the card reader went offline, and the entire machine entered emergency shutdown mode. Marcus monitored the cartel's radio traffic as panic set in. "The machine's eating our money," Santos screamed over the radio. "Everything's locked up and we can't access the storage compartment." "Call the repair service," another voice responded. "Get a technician out here immediately." Marcus waited exactly 12 minutes before calling his own dispatch service. "This is Thompson. I'm in the area and noticed ATM hash 2847 displaying critical errors. Should I respond to assess the situation?" "Affirmative," dispatch replied. "Commerce Bank is reporting a major malfunction with customer funds at risk. Priority emergency response." Marcus arrived at the scene to find Santos's crew in barely controlled panic. Their money was trapped inside a machine they couldn't access, in a public location where they couldn't use force to retrieve it. "Thank God you're here," Santos said, recognizing Marcus from their previous encounter. "This machine just went crazy and locked up it's holding customer deposits hostage." "Let me take a look," Marcus replied professionally. Marcus connected his diagnostic equipment and began the performance of his career. He pretended to discover massive internal failures requiring complete disassembly of the cash storage system. Every action was carefully calculated to appear necessary while providing access to the cartel's hidden money. "This is bad," Marcus announced after 15 minutes of theatrical troubleshooting. "The cash transport mechanism has completely jammed. I'll need to manually extract all currency to prevent permanent damage to the storage system." Santos watched nervously as Marcus systematically removed money from both the legitimate bank storage and the cartel's hidden compartments. Marcus counted everything aloud, documenting each bundle for security purposes, while secretly transferring $50,000 worth of cartel money to his equipment bag. Total recovery, $127,000 in mixed denominations, Marcus announced, handing the money back to Santos minus the amount he'd stolen. You're lucky I was in the area. Another hour in that jammed mechanism would have destroyed everything. Santos quickly counted the returned money, his relief evident when the amount matched Marcus's stated total. He had no way to know that Marcus had miscounted by exactly $50,000. Outstanding work, Santos said, handing Marcus a $500 tip. Professional service like this is why we trust cash flow systems with our banking relationships. Marcus completed the repair, restored the ATM to normal operation, and departed with $50,000 in stolen cartel money hidden in his equipment bag. He'd pulled off the perfect theft, stealing from criminals while making them grateful for his assistance. The next day, Marcus made his payment to Victor. $18,000 as agreed, plus an extra $7,000 to accelerate debt reduction. Victor was visibly impressed. Your consulting business must be very profitable, Mr. Thompson. I found a specialized niche that pays extremely well, Marcus replied. As long as I maintain my current client relationships, I shouldn't have any trouble meeting our payment schedule. Victor nodded approvingly, unaware that Marcus's client relationships involved stealing from drug cartels that would torture him to death if they discovered his identity. Marcus was becoming addicted to more than just gambling. The psychological thrill of outsmarting dangerous criminals was becoming its own compulsion. Each successful theft increased his confidence and made him hunger for bigger scores. But Santos was beginning to notice patterns in the ATM malfunctions, and Marcus's growing boldness was about to attract attention from law enforcement agencies investigating the sudden increase in sophisticated financial crimes across Chicago. By September 2018, Marcus had successfully stolen $150,000 from cartel operations through fake technical emergencies. But Victor was increasing his payment demands. Santos was getting suspicious about the ATM malfunctions, and Marcus needed a bigger score to stay ahead of both threats. His most audacious plan yet would involve impersonating federal law enforcement during the cartel's largest weekly money transfer. Marcus spent weeks studying FBI procedures through online law enforcement training materials and news reports of actual federal raids. He purchased realistic FBI identification from a document forger, acquired an official-looking windbreaker from a costume supplier, and practiced federal agent behavior until it became second nature. The target was ATM hash 3156 at Federal Trust Bank, where Santos's crew conducted their largest weekly cash storage operation every Friday night. Marcus's reconnaissance had identified this as the cartel's primary collection point, typically containing over $400,000 in drug money by Saturday morning. On September 14th, Marcus monitored police radio frequencies and identified a brief window when real federal agents were conducting an unrelated operation across town. Using radio equipment purchased with stolen money, he began broadcasting fake FBI communications about a financial crimes operation in progress at Federal Trust Bank. At 11:23 p.m., Marcus arrived at the bank wearing his FBI windbreaker and carrying authentic-looking federal identification. Santos's crew was in the middle of loading money into ATM hash 3156 when Marcus approached with the authority of federal law enforcement. Special Agent Thompson, Financial Crimes Division, Marcus announced, showing his fake badge. This location is under federal investigation for money laundering activities. I need everyone to step away from the ATM immediately. Santos's crew panicked, thinking they'd been caught in a legitimate FBI sting operation. Several men reached for weapons before Santos waved them off, recognizing that shooting federal agents would bring devastating law enforcement attention to their entire organization. There must be some mistake, Santos said carefully. We're just conducting routine maintenance on banking equipment. Sir, please step back while I secure potential evidence, Marcus replied in his practiced federal agent voice. This is an ongoing investigation into international money laundering using compromised banking systems. Marcus began collecting evidence from the ATM's hidden compartments, loading $180,000 in cartel money into official-looking evidence bags. He worked quickly but professionally, maintaining the appearance of legitimate federal procedure. The situation became complicated when real police units responded to his fake radio traffic. Two Chicago PD patrol cars arrived, expecting to provide support for a federal operation they couldn't find in their dispatch system. "Officer," Marcus addressed the first policeman, "this is a classified federal operation. I need you to secure the perimeter and prevent civilian access until our evidence collection is complete." The police officers, confused but unwilling to interfere with what appeared to be legitimate federal business, established a security cordon around the bank. Their presence actually helped Marcus's cover by making the operation appear more authentic. Santos watched helplessly as Marcus loaded their money into evidence bags, unable to protest without admitting the cash was proceeds from drug sales. The presence of local police made any violent response impossible. "Evidence collection complete," Marcus announced after 20 minutes. "This location will remain under federal surveillance. Any attempts to tamper with evidence or interfere with our investigation will result in additional charges." Marcus loaded his evidence into a van, rented specifically for this operation, and departed while Santos's crew remained under police observation. By the time the real FBI confirmed they had no ongoing operation at Federal Trust Bank, Marcus had vanished into Chicago traffic with $180,000 in stolen cartel money. The aftermath was chaotic and dangerous. Santos's organization realized they'd been victimized by someone impersonating federal law enforcement, but they couldn't report the theft without admitting to money laundering. The real FBI began investigating reports of fake federal agents conducting unauthorized operations. Agent Sarah Chen from the FBI's Financial Crimes Division was assigned to investigate the incident. She began analyzing ATM maintenance records and banking security footage, getting uncomfortably close to identifying Marcus as the common factor in several suspicious incidents. But Marcus had solved his immediate financial crisis. Victor received a payment of $25,000, significantly more than the required $18,000. "Your consulting business continues to exceed expectations," Victor observed. "Perhaps you should consider expanding your operations." Marcus was already planning exactly that. The adrenaline rush of outsmarting both criminals and law enforcement had become as addictive as gambling. But instead of losing money, he was winning increasingly larger amounts through psychological manipulation and technical expertise. His next target would be even more ambitious. He was going to trick both major cartels into destroying each other while he profited from their war. Marcus's research revealed Chicago's criminal underworld was controlled by competing organizations. The Sinaloa cartel, led by Santos, controlled south and west sides. The smaller but violent Zeta cartel was expanding into Sinaloa territory through intimidation. Both cartels used Marcus's ATM network but operated different schedules on different machines. Marcus realized he could manipulate their rivalry into open warfare while stealing from both during the chaos. Marcus began planting evidence that each cartel was planning attacks on the other. Using burner phones, he sent Santos anonymous intelligence about Zeta surveillance on Sinaloa money locations. Simultaneously, he contacted Zeta leadership with details about Sinaloa security weaknesses. Both organizations began seeing fabricated evidence of enemy activity. Marcus escalated by staging false flag attacks, conducting a drive-by shooting near ATM hash 2847 during Sinaloa operations, leaving Zeta gang tags behind. Santos's crew retaliated against the fake Zeta attack, killing 2 dealers. Zeta responded by firebombing Sinaloa businesses and executing a lieutenant. News reports described escalating gang violence across Chicago's South Side. While both cartels fought each other, Marcus emptied 4 unguarded ATMs, collecting over $400,000 in a single night. The gang violence was spiraling beyond control. 12 people died in the first week, including innocent bystanders. Victor received his largest payment yet, $35,000. But the gang war was attracting federal attention. Agent Sarah Chen's investigation had expanded to include suspicious ATM malfunctions during criminal violence periods. Marcus needed one final massive score to pay off Victor completely and fund his escape. Marcus planned his masterpiece, manipulating both cartels into a final confrontation while emptying their entire Chicago storage network. His intelligence revealed both organizations planned holiday relocations. Marcus saw an opportunity to convince each that the other was planning massive theft of their relocated money. Using encrypted messaging, Marcus contacted Santos. Zeta planning major hit on your holiday relocation. December 1st, 2 a.m. They know your routes. Simultaneously, he messaged Zeta leadership. Sinaloa planning to hit your consolidation operation. Same time, same date. Recommend preemptive strike. Both organizations took the bait, preparing for what they believed were defensive operations against enemy aggression. On December 1st, 2018 at 2 a.m., both cartels launched simultaneous attacks across the city. Over 70 armed criminals fought in 6 locations, while Marcus systematically looted 8 unguarded ATM locations. Total collected $1.2 million in a single night. The gang war raged for 6 hours. By dawn, 23 people were dead, including Santos and the Zeta leadership. Both criminal organizations had destroyed each other in a war Marcus orchestrated for personal profit. Marcus paid off Victor completely. $340,000 as agreed. Our business relationship is concluded. Victor nodded approvingly. Excellent work. I suggest you disappear. Chicago is becoming unhealthy for people in certain businesses. Marcus took Victor's advice seriously. He'd stolen nearly $2 million from 2 major criminal organizations while manipulating them into mutual destruction. Law enforcement agencies were investigating the gang war. Federal agents were analyzing the ATM network for security breaches, and any surviving cartel members would eventually realize they'd been manipulated by an outside party. But Marcus had evolved beyond simple theft. The psychological manipulation of dangerous criminals had become more addictive than gambling ever was. He was no longer stealing just for money. He was addicted to the intellectual challenge of outsmarting people who would kill him if they discovered his deception. Rather than disappearing, Marcus began planning his transformation into something new, a digital vigilante who would use his skills to destroy criminal organizations while protecting innocent people from predators like Victor and Santos. If you're enjoying this story, please hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell. You won't want to miss what happens next. Federal agent Sarah Chen had spent months investigating the suspicious pattern of ATM malfunctions, fake FBI operations, and gang violence that seemed connected by an invisible thread. Her analysis of maintenance records, security footage, and financial data had identified one common factor. Marcus Thompson appeared at or near every suspicious incident. Chen's investigation revealed that Marcus had technical access to all the compromised ATMs, possessed the skills necessary to modify banking systems, and had been present during multiple incidents involving criminal activity. But she lacked direct evidence linking him to the thefts or the gang war. On December 15th, Chen obtained a warrant to search Marcus's apartment and vehicle. She expected to find stolen money, equipment used for ATM modification, or evidence of his involvement with criminal organizations. Instead, she found an empty apartment and a comprehensive digital dead man's switch. Marcus had anticipated eventual law enforcement investigation. Before disappearing, he'd programmed an automated system to release detailed evidence about both cartels' criminal activities if he failed to input security codes every 24 hours. When Chen triggered the dead man's switch by searching his apartment, Marcus's system automatically uploaded terabytes of incriminating evidence to news organizations, federal agencies, and congressional oversight committees. The data included financial records, operational plans, personnel files, and documentation of criminal activities worth over $2 billion. The media explosion was immediate and devastating. News organizations reported on the Chicago cartel files, detailing how major drug trafficking organizations had operated with impunity while corrupting local officials and infiltrating legitimate businesses. Federal prosecutors used Marcus's evidence to indict 89 individuals across 12 states on charges ranging from drug trafficking to murder. The investigations revealed connections between Chicago cartels and international criminal organizations spanning Mexico, Colombia, and Eastern Europe. But Marcus himself had vanished completely. Chen's investigation revealed that he'd created a new identity using sophisticated document forgery and had likely fled the country using a false passport. International intelligence agencies eventually tracked Marcus to Costa Rica, where he'd established a legitimate computer security business under the name David Chen. His company provided cybersecurity consulting to banks and financial institutions, using his knowledge of criminal techniques to help protect against the same types of attacks he'd once perpetrated. Chen realized that Marcus had successfully transformed himself from a desperate gambling addict into a sophisticated international criminal who now worked on the right side of the law. He'd used his stolen money to fund a new life dedicated to fighting the same types of criminals he'd once robbed. Over the following years, Marcus's anonymous intelligence tips helped law enforcement agencies solve dozens of major financial crimes. He provided crucial information about money laundering operations, cryptocurrency theft rings, and international fraud networks, always ensuring that his assistants couldn't be traced back to his current identity. The criminal underworld began referring to an unknown entity called the digital ghost, someone who could penetrate their most secure operations, steal their money, and provide law enforcement with evidence leading to their arrest. Criminal organizations implemented expensive security measures, trying to protect against an enemy they couldn't identify or locate. Marcus had found his true calling. Instead of stealing money for personal gain, he was stealing information to destroy criminal organizations that preyed on innocent people. The same psychological satisfaction he'd gained from outsmarting cartels now came from protecting potential victims of financial crimes. Chen maintained a classified file on Marcus's activities, knowing he was the digital ghost but unable to prove it. She'd grudgingly come to respect his evolution from criminal to vigilante, even as she remained officially obligated to arrest him if the opportunity arose. On the 5th anniversary of the Chicago gang war, Chen received an encrypted message. "Thank you for teaching me that law enforcement and justice aren't always the same thing. Sometimes the best way to serve justice is to work outside the system while supporting it." A grateful former criminal. Chen never responded to the message, but she kept it in her classified files as a reminder that sometimes criminals could be redeemed through purpose larger than personal gain. Marcus Thompson had started as a gambling addict who destroyed his family for money. He'd evolved into a master manipulator who stole millions from dangerous criminals. Finally, he'd transformed into a digital vigilante who used his skills to protect innocent people from the same predators who'd once threatened his children. His story proved that addiction could be channeled into obsession for justice, that criminal skills could serve legitimate purposes, and that redemption was possible even for people who'd committed terrible acts in desperate circumstances. Emma and Jake Thompson, now teenagers, knew their father as David Chen, the cybersecurity consultant who'd helped fund their education and supported their mother through difficult years. They had no idea that their college tuition was paid with money stolen from drug cartels, or that their father had orchestrated one of the most violent gang wars in Chicago history. Some secrets were too dangerous to share, even with family, but Marcus had ensured that his children would grow up safe, educated, and protected from the criminal world that had once threatened to destroy them all.